Good morning. This video is to go over both incomplete dominance and codominance, which is under the complex inheritance practice. So what I want to remind you of is these two complex inheritance in non-Mendelian genetics. One of them is a blend of traits, and the other one is when both dominant traits show up. Incomplete dominance, I want you to think about a couple that says, I'm incomplete without you. They're a blend of each other. They love being together, okay? Incomplete dominance is when you have a mix of traits. So you can have two individual traits, but then you can actually have a blend. So a great example of this is maybe a curly-haired person and a straight-haired person. And when they have a baby, they have wavy-haired babies, okay? Or a blend of traits. Codominance is when both dominant traits show up. I want you to think co-captain. I want you to think co-pilot, okay? Both traits will show up at the same time. They're different, but they'll both show up at the same time, just like co-captains will both show up and co-pilots will both show up. So an example of codominance would be a straight-haired person and a curly-haired person having a baby where half of the hair is curly and half of the hair is straight, not a blend. Remember, incomplete dominance is a blend. They're incomplete without each other. And codominance is when both show up to the party. All right. So we're going to go ahead and start with an incomplete dominant cross. So I'm going to real quick read this to you and we'll go through it together. So the color of some flower petals is determined by incomplete dominance or a blending of traits, which occur when neither allele is dominant. In the flowers below, big R codes for red petals. Big W codes for white petals. And big R codes for pink petals because red and white make pink, so a blend. Fill in the key and solve the problems below. Fill in the Punnett squared genotypes and then copy and paste the flowers into the picture to make more of them and drag them into the Punnett square when needed. All right, so let's do this together. Red flower. Up here, it said big R are red petals. So we're just going to real quick type in the genotype. Big R. White flower is big W. And remember, I'm getting this all from the reading at the top. And then a pink flower is a mix of the two, which is big R, big W. Now, I know traditionally in Punnett squares, you always put the capital letter first. You'll notice here that in incomplete dominance, because there isn't really a dominant allele, they're both capital. So just be consistent. If you put WR, that's fine. Just be consistent throughout. In this one, I gave you RW, so just use RW, okay? So now we're going to set up the cross. And again, I don't care which side you put which parent, but I went ahead and labeled these here for you. Well, Mrs. Mormon did. She made this beautiful activity. So a red flower is big R. So in this box, it will be big R. And in this box, it will be big R, okay? Parent 2 is a white flower. So here we are going to have big W. And then here we're going to have big W. Now let's put them together, okay? Now these inside the Punnett square represent the potential offspring, okay? So RW, because we're getting one from this parent, one from this parent. Here we're going to have RW again. Here again, we're going to have RW. And here again, we're going to have RW. Now let's talk about this. Big W is white. Big R is red. And big R, big W is going to be a blend of traits. Remember, they're incomplete without each other. They're a mix together, okay? So they're all going to be pink. So we're just going to real quick copy and paste these. So here we have a pink one. Copy and paste another one. Here we have a pink one. Copy and paste another one. And last one, we can just drag this over, okay? So you can see that we have a white flower, we have a red flower. In a Mendelian cross, you would see that there is a dominant trait that would overshadow the other if it was heterozygous. But in heterozygous incomplete dominance, it's when both are going to blend together or mix together, okay? So there's one example. Let's go to another one. We already read this top part. We're just going to do it again. Here, we're going to cross a pink flower with a white flower. So let's go over this again. A red flower is big R, big R. A white flower is big W, big W. And a pink flower is going to be big R, big W, okay? So a white parent flower is WW. So let's go ahead and put one W in this square and one W in this square. We've got a pink flower now. So that's going to be RW. All right. And again, we're looking for that blend of traits. Let's go ahead and put these parents together. These two parents have a baby flower, and we've got RW, okay? Here, these two parents have a baby flower, and we have RW again. And again, we're filling out the genotypes right now. We'll get to the phenotypes next. This offspring would be WW, and this offspring would be WW. Okay, so we filled out the genotypes. Remember, genotypes are two alleles put together, okay? An allele would represent one of these letters. All right, now we're going to do the phenotype or the physical characteristic. So RW is, look over here at this handy chart, a pink flower. So let's go ahead and copy that one. We got to paste it, and then we're going to take it right here. And we have two pink flowers, 50%. So actually, we can just take this original one right there. And then WW is a white flower. So we're going to do the exact same thing. Copy and paste that. And these are the phenotypes again. And then we're going to drag and drop that right here. And drag and drop that right here. Okay. All right. Remember, we're on incomplete dominant. There's a blend of traits. Okay. So let's do another one. A third cross of incomplete dominance. Again, a red flower is big R, big R. A white flower is big W, and a pink flower is going to be big R, big W. So now we're going to cross two pink flowers. And again, pink flowers are RW, as you can see up there. So let's go ahead and type that in, R and W. Remember, one allele per box, R and W. Let's put these together. Here we've got, for the genotype of these two alleles, we're going to have big R, big R. Here for the genotype, we're going to have big R, big W. Here for the genotype, we're going to have big R, big W again. And here for the genotype, we're going to have WW. Okay, those are the genotypes. Now we have to figure out the phenotypes, those physical characteristics. So big R is red. So we're going to go ahead and copy this and drag it in there. And big R, big W would be pink. If on a quiz you aren't given, or a test, you aren't given this chart, I would highly recommend going ahead and writing down what are my genotypes for the phenotypes. Because sometimes when we look up here, it's just really dense. So making that chart on your own is really, really helpful. So big R, big W is pink for the phenotype. And big W is white. So what we can see here is there's a 25% chance that two pink flowers would have a red flower offspring. There's a 50% chance, or half ratio, that it would have a pink offspring. And there's a 25% or a quarter possibility that the two pink flowers would have a white offspring. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and put this through on the conclusion. Let's talk about this. So in each of the tables for each cross you've previously performed, give the phenotype percentages for the individuals that would come from this cross. Okay, this is exactly what we just went over. So in cross 1, what percentage would be red? Let's look at this. Well, that's easy. 0 of the offspring can be red. So, and I asked you for the percentage, not the fraction. So make sure when I ask you specifically for the percentage, you put the percentage. All right. And there's that dictionary going again. All right. 0%. All All right, back to the first cross. What percentage is white? 0. But there's 100% pink. I know it seems silly to put the 0%, but for a true phenotype ratio, you need to put the 0% as well. You cannot just put 100% pink flowers. That's not a ratio. Okay, you have to compare each of the phenotypes in a phenotype ratio. All right, let's go ahead to cross 2. Cross 2 had 0% red offspring, 50% pink, and 50% white. So 0%, 50% white, and 50% pink. All right. Percentage of the offspring for cross 3. We have 50% pink, we have 25% red, and we have 25% white. So we have 50% pink, 25% white, and 25% red. Okay. Which cross performed produced the most pink flowers? 50%, 50%. Cross 1. Cross 1. All right, next one. Which cross produced the most red flowers? Well, none of them produced red except for cross number 3. I want to remind you something with incomplete dominance. Incomplete, I want you to think of love, how people change for one another. They blend their lives together. Incomplete dominance is when both dominant traits blend together and mix when there's a heterozygous. Okay. Now we're going to move into codominance. And I want to remind you, codominance is like co-pilots or co-captains, where even though they both have similar jobs, they both show up to the sporting event, or they both show up to the plane to fly in. Okay. So codominance are when both dominant traits can show up at the same time. So we're not going to blend them. They're actually both going to be distinctly visible at the same time. So let's go through this together. The color of a wild horse's coat is determined by 2 dominant alleles. A horse with the genotype Big B will have a brown coat. WW will have a white coat, and BW will be a painted coat, which is brown and white. If this was an incomplete dominance, this would be a light brown horse. This is not incomplete. Both brown and white show up on the horse, okay? In an incomplete dominance, if we had a brown horse and a white horse, the heterozygous mixture would have a light brown horse, okay? In codominance, both of these traits are going to show up in that mix, okay? So a brown horse is Big B for the genotype. The genotype for the white horse is going to be Big W. And for a painted horse, it's going to be Big B, Big W. So in this very first cross, we are going to cross a brown horse with a white horse. So we're going to separate. A brown horse is Big B. So we're going to put one Big B in one box and one Big B in the other box. A white horse is Big W. So we're going to put one Big W there and one Big W there. And now we're going to figure out the potential offspring, okay? So here we would have Big B, Big W. Here we would have Big B, Big W. Here we would have Big B, Big W. And here we would have Big B, Big W. Now, those are all heterozygous, okay? So it's going to be a mixture of the 2. I want it to be clear. It's not going to blend it together. Both of those dominant traits are going to show up to the party. Both of them are going to be represented in that offspring. So all of them are going to be this painted horse right here. So let's go ahead and just make 4 of those, because all 4 of those are going to be represented, okay? So now you're just going to drag and drop those in. Beautiful painted horse. Painted just means it's like spotted, okay? Spotted would be a great other example of a codominance problem, okay? So all 4 of those offspring are going to be painted. Let's go ahead to the next one for codominance. Same exact situation. We've got a brown horse. A brown horse is Big B. A white horse is Big W, and a painted horse is Big B, Big W. But in this cross, we're going to cross a painted or a spotted horse and a white horse. So white horse is Big W. So we're going to separate that genotype into the alleles. And a painted horse is Big B, big W, okay? The offspring is going to get one allele from mom, one allele from dad. So let's go ahead and put these together. Big B, big W, big W, big W, big B, big W, and big W, big W. Okay, we've got a little bit of a difference in variance in these offspring. Big B, big W represents a painted horse. There we go. All right, big B, big W represents a painted horse again. Big W is a white horse. Sorry, guys, there are my dogs. They're saying hello to everyone. All right, so we've got 50% of those spotted or painted horses and 50% of those white horses. All right, last problem on codominance. We've got a brown horse. Brown horses' genotypes are big B, big B. White horse, big W, big W. A painted horse is big W, big B, big W. Again, if you put big W before big B, that's fine. Just be consistent. All right, we're crossing a brown horse and a spotted horse or a painted horse. So a brown horse's genotype is big B, big B. So we got to separate those alleles first and foremost. We got big B. We got big B and then a painted horse, which is big B, big W. All right, so this offspring would have big B, big B. This offspring would get one big B allele and one big W allele. This offspring would get two big B alleles, and this offspring would get a big B and a big W. All right, so big Bs are going to be a brown horse. Big W, big Bs are going to be a painted horse. So let's go ahead and copy and paste these. All right, so this is a painted horse, and this is a painted horse, and then we've got two brown horses. All righty. Okay, so there's a 50% chance of having a brown horse offspring and a 50% chance of having a painted horse offspring. So we're going to do exactly what we did with incomplete dominance. Remember, in incomplete dominance, there's a blend of traits, or the traits actually mix together. They combine. But in codominance, both are going to show up at the same time. You're going to be able to see both brown and white. You're going to see spots. You're going to see both straight and curly hair. So in cross one, let's do it. We had 0% brown, 0% white, but 100% painted. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. 0%, 0%, 100%. All right, cross number two. We're trying to figure out what percentage we have brown, what percentage we have white, what percentage we have of the painted horse. So in cross number two, we have 50% painted, 50% white, 0% brown. So we have 0% brown. We have 50% white. And we have 50% painted. And last but not least, in cross number three, we have 50% brown and 50% painted, but we've got 0% white. 50%, 0%, 50%. Now we're going to answer a couple questions. Which cross produced the most painted horses? So you're going to look right here. Cross one. And which cross produced the most white horses? Cross number two. So I'm going to say this again. Okay. Incomplete dominance, you're going to see a blend of traits, okay? You have a red flower and a white flower, and you can actually make a pink flower. You have a black flower and a white flower, and you can make a gray flower. You have a straight-haired person and a curly-haired person, and you can make a wavy-haired person, okay? In codominance, you're going to see both traits show up at the same time. So if you have a brown horse and a white horse, you're going to see a speckled horse. If you have a straight-haired person and a curly-haired person, you're going to have that middle part like Gen Z wants anyways, and it's going to have half curly hair and half straight hair. Okay. Please don't hesitate to reach out to your teacher if you have any questions whatsoever. That's why we are here. I hope this helped.